I get confused in using derived houses. And so, if I look at someone and the partner is in the whatever house, it's like, so they're in the fifth house of the native, and so they're interested in children, or did I say, oh, it looks like they're in their own
11.
11th house, and so they're interested in that. I get confused when doing that, so it's not a really specific question, but um, maybe a topic you would want to address. I'm not sure.
I'd love to address it. Okay. All right. So the question is about derived houses and when and how to use them in natal astrology. This is a wonderful question and a very synchronistic question because I literally just wrote the chapter on derived houses for the new book on horary astrology that we're going to be releasing later this year. So, anybody who knows me knows that I am a lover of derived houses. I think it's a wonderful tool to use within our astrology. I think it's something great to learn from your horary practice and then to apply to all other spheres of your astrological endeavors. However, things do get a little bit wonky when we use house derivations. Now, for those of you who don't know, a derived house is a house from the perspective of another person who has a house within our charts. So, from the perspective of my partner, the eighth house of the base chart would be my partner's second house, which means that is my partner's house of money. And this is because my partner is represented by the seventh house, and therefore the second house from my partner, which would be the eighth house of the base chart, becomes my partner's second house. Now, I've seen some people do strange things where they start counting the eighth house as the first house from my partner, which means in that mistaken rationale, the ninth house would be the second house from my partner. But that doesn't make any sense at all, and that is not how we do house derivations within traditional astrology. And I don't even think that's how anybody does house derivations in modern astrology because it literally makes no sense. The seventh house is the house of our partner, therefore, the second house from our seventh house is going to be the derived second house or the house of my partner's money. Now, in terms of how far to throw this from an astrological perspective, we find in the 17th century Jean Baptiste Morin telling us that the light is weakened the more we bend it, which means even though we can use our base chart to give us insight into the lives of other people within our life, we probably want to be mindful not to push that too far because the light is weakened the more we bend it. Within the context of my natal practice, I have used house derivations to speak about people's siblings and to speak about the spouses of their siblings and to speak about their grandparents and to speak about all sorts of stuff, just because that is a possibility that we find within traditional astrology. And even then, I know that I could speak far more confidently about a person's siblings if I have the chart of their siblings, as opposed to me trying to derive the entire story of their siblings' life specifically from the framework of their natal chart. And the reason for that is because the light is weakened the more we bend it. So, how far would I take this narrative of derived houses? I think I would take it as far as the first level. So, I would take it as far as talking about my boyfriend in his own 12th house, which would be the sixth house of the base chart. Or I would talk about my boyfriend in his own second house, which would be the eighth house of the base chart. Similarly, I would speak about my boyfriend in his own sixth house, which would be the 12th house of the base chart, saying that my boyfriend is probably someone who stresses himself out quite a lot and a part of his major stresses in life has to do with his health concerns. All of this would be true if my boyfriend or my lover were in his own sixth house, which is the 12th house of the base chart. And because he is stressing himself out so much because of some of his health challenges, he may be showing up in my life as a source of secret suffering or even as a hidden enemy to my joy, both of which are significations of the 12th house. So I think that using derived houses in this way does make a lot of sense. However, I don't think that I would use derived houses to begin speaking about my boyfriend's sister's husband's cat. Because I think that when we start to do that, we start to push the boundaries of astrological reason as well as just common sense by thinking that so much can be compounded within the context of our natal charts. Now, I haven't practiced all of the astrology I'll practice within my lifetime. So maybe if you ask me this question 10 years from now, I would definitely say that you can use derived houses within your own natal chart to identify your boyfriend's sister's husband's cat. However, I definitely don't feel that way today. So, in terms of house derivations, I think that the major way to use them is at the first level of derivations, where we speak about our brother being in his own seventh house, and therefore that means dot dot dot. Or we speak about our child being in their own 12th house, and therefore dot dot dot. Or we speak about our mother being in her own sixth house, and therefore that means whatever story we can derive from that. However, I don't think that we should overly push the narrative of how to use the derived houses. And truthfully, at the end of the day, you don't even need to use derived houses at all within the context of your astrology, because if you use your base chart, which is called the radix chart or the root chart, if you just use that base chart based on you and your life and how you are interacting with the various rulers of the other houses within your horoscope, then that's pretty sufficient. The information that we get from the derived houses can be great, it can be exciting, it can be freaky, it could be something that really blows our socks off. But sometimes blowing your socks off isn't necessarily the most important thing in the world. Sometimes your socks would do far better if they stayed on your feet, because some of the excitement we find when we use derived houses can cause us to say things that stretch the possibilities of our astrology too far. And as astrologers, we augment the mistakes we make when we try to stretch the possibilities of our astrology too far. So one thing that we definitely know for a fact is that your natal chart has the ability to describe you, as well as all of the major people within your life, as well as the concrete events that make you who you are within this lifetime. Something that we secondarily know to be true is that we can use our natal chart as a means of describing the circumstances that the other people within our lives have within their lives within our lifetime. This is specifically true in terms of our family connections, and this is specifically true if we're the first child within our family. Because whether you like it or not, if you're the oldest child within your family, then you carry the karmic story of your entire family within your birth chart. The youngest child, not so much. They're just floating around in the wind, not knowing what to do with themselves. However, if you are the oldest child within your family, you carry the story of your entire family heritage and legacy within your birth chart, because that's just how it works. So, sorry to say, and a lot of people feel quite hurt by hearing that, but that's just the way the astrological fortune cookie crumbles. So, if you have the birth chart of someone who is the oldest child within their family, then that person's birth chart will more than likely speak more truthfully about the relationships between their siblings and their spouses, and the relationships between their siblings, and if their siblings are sick or not, and the relationship between the parents, and whether or not the mother is in her sixth house or her whatever house. That first child's birth chart is going to do that far more accurately than the chart of the second child or the third child or the fourth child or the 10th child. So that is one way how I think we can use derived houses a little bit more accurately in terms of describing family relationships, especially if we're the first child. But beyond that, I think that the overall theory within my mind is that we have to make sure that we understand the chart based on the person who owns the chart first. Because if we can do that masterfully, just understand the chart as a baseline figure of a person's life, then using the derived houses doesn't even become that necessary. And when we do use the derived houses, they should only be used to corroborate things that we would have already said about that person's baseline chart to begin with.
That was good. Good, especially, the statement about using them for corroboration, because then that kind of puts it in context. Thank you.
You're very, very welcome in the universe. Next caller